folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I appreciate the fact that you take the time out of your day to listen to my show. Thank you very much. On the show today is a really close friend of mine, my friend Paul Cohen. Paul is a sketch performer, improviser, and he's has a history playing in pop-punk bands in the New York City area. And one of the things when I first met him, because some of you know this about me, I do tech for a sketch group in New York City that performs regularly at the People's Improv Theater here in Manhattan called Backdoor Barbecue. I do the lights and sound, and I write, and occasionally I perform and do voiceover for their shows. And Paul I met when I started working with this group, and we bonded really quickly because we both love the same kind of like early 2000s, late 90s pop punk bands like Drive Through Records. If you've listened to my episode with Tim from Alistair, Newfound Glory, we really bonded closely over those bands because those are bands that my friends when I was growing up in the suburbs were really into, and they definitely had a moment where they were really popular. But there are a few people in my life that I still actively have passionate discussions about this genre of music about, and Paul Cohen is one of those people. And the other person is my really good friend Leo Quinn, who I haven't seen for a very long time, but we talk frequently because Leo he listens to the show, and it really means a lot that he does that. So Leo, if you're listening, I hope you're having a good day. Thank you for listening to the show today. If you enjoy this, next time you come to New York, we'll hang out with Paul. It'll be a good time. And what was curious to me talking to Paul is that he was getting, before he got into comedy, he was getting ready to go on tour with a band and go all in, and then that changed abruptly. And he tells me about the music scene in New York at that time and his experience growing up in Staten Island, which is a borough of the city I know next to nothing about. And it was a really great informed kind of chat with a guy who's a really good friend of mine. So this is kind of like this is more of the awesome side of Between Awesome and Disaster, this conversation. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to tell a friend. Word of mouth is how a podcast like this grows. You can write a review on iTunes, or you can add us to your favorites list on Stitcher. Those are things that would greatly help me out. So thank you very much for doing that. And you can follow me on Twitter at Comic Will Carey, and you can follow the podcast on Twitter at AwesomeDPod. And if you are in the New York City area, Backdoor Barbecue has a show this Thursday, March 28th, and I hope you guys can make it out. So now let's go to my chat with Paul Cohen. Little more in the cans. Okay, how's that?
This is good.
Okay, good. Yeah. Excellent. I got to get a headphone amp. I think that'll be my next investment in this.
Should go for
in
it.
This rig.
I love the room though.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I got all my
The guitar rack is super cool.
Thank you. Yes, I've got my Epiphone Les Paul Custom. Got my Mark Hoppus signature bass.
Love the Mark Hoppus bass.
Yeah. Mexican-made Fender Jazz bass, which is all you really need.
Oh, Fender Jazz! I played bass in a band, and I had a Fender Jazz bass, and it was like the best. Nothing sounded as good as it. It was great.
I think,
especially for a lot of the music we like, the tone hits great.
Oh my God! Especially because you are like one of my few pop punk friends that I have in New York City. So, for that style of music, like specifically like the early 2000s, even like into the 10s, because there was this sort of like brief revival where all the bands were like wearing like flannel, bands like Knuckle Puck and that whole like easy core kind of thing.
To all of these bands.
Oh, me too. But yeah, the jazz bass, P bass to a certain extent, but I just think the jazz sounds so good.
It's perfect. I I feel like I've been listening to Easycore more recently, even though some of the albums aren't that new. Because I went back and I was listening to old 4 Year Strong.
Yeah.
And then on one of my like YouTube channels popped up, and it's like a guy who analyzes like the quick rise and fall of genres, and it was about Easycore.
The punk rock MBA.
It might have been.
Yeah, I'm in that Facebook group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have even told me about this guy, and maybe that's why I found it somehow. Because I think I watched the pop punk episode, and then the Easycore episode came out, and I watched it because it's about like newfound glory, and they led the way for like 4 Year Strong and A Day to Remember, and Set Your Goals, and Chunk, No Captain Chunk, and so I went back and downloaded like an old Captain Chunk album, and I was like, this is really good.
Yeah. Apparently, people are starting to look at Attack differently also. Because I remember I thought they were the first time I ever heard, techno and metalcore breakdowns. That's interesting. And they're kind of viewed as like the best example of that, because there was a bunch of offshoots of that sound after they came out also.
I think it's cool. I think everyone should like what they like.
I agree.
Pop punk has a bad stigma. I don't know why.
I don't either, because it's not because it's considered like the poppy mainstream version of like skate punk or real punk. But the thing, and what those videos kind of talk about that, is that pop punk was very, everybody can join the party. Like, hey, you listen to this song. It's cool. Whereas like the older skate punk bands were kind of douchebags after a certain point.
Yeah, well, I think there's like a happy medium to it. You know, I listen to like both ends of the spectrum, I guess, but you know, there's definitely a period where you're like, oh, I like the Simple Plan album, but I could see why someone's like too much for me. It's too sugary, too poppy. Because I think the bands I've always liked more, and it's probably, I'm a huge Newfound Glory fan. Always had. You know, they always had like some hardcore breakdowns and stuff like that. They always, even when they were getting really big, their albums would have tracks with like the fast, real punk drum beat in them. Like they never really shy. They never really was like, oh, let's go full tilt into that.
Yeah. And I had never heard the phrase easycore until like years later, but it makes total sense, because those are my favorite parts of like metalcore and hardcore music, is the the breakdown part.
I love the breakdown, and I love the poppy vocals. Like the poppy vocals are the best part about pop punk, because I liked, like I legitimately liked pop music.
Yeah, so did I. I kind of want to trace this a little bit. You're from New York City?
I grew up in Staten Island.
Which
not
has
a big pop punk scene.
I imagine not. But what was your experience in Staten Island? Because I feel like most of our group and New York, maybe even most New Yorkers, have this idea of what Staten Island is like. This sort of like,
it's probably spot on. Well, but here's why pop punk I view through a different lens than most people. If you liked pop punk in Staten Island, you were the outsider. You know, it wasn't like I remember when Blink-182 was probably the one band that really broke hard. But I'll never remember like being in high school, and I think my cousin grew up in New Jersey, and she turned me on to a lot of these bands. You know, I think I was probably about high school age when, say, Damn It came out for Blink. Maybe I was like around 13, 14 is when I discovered it.
Right.
And a lot of it was my cousin being like, oh, you like that Damn It song, whatever, that's big on the radio. And she was like, go listen to, I think she bought me like Losing Streak by Less Than Jake. And maybe like Going by the Way of the Buffalo by MXPX, you know. And all of a sudden I was like, who are these bands? But I'll never forget, I remember I was in high school, and this is like when Enema of the State is like blowing up. And I remember it was something out of a movie. A girl came up to me, she goes, who's the Adderus? Like I was wearing an Atari's t-shirt or hoodie circa before their big album that went mainstream.
Before So Long Astoria.
Yeah, before that album.
And their Boys of Summer.
Yeah, it was
so like
way before that.
So like this is probably like Losing Streak,
like San Dimas, High School Football Rules. That by the way, I went and listened back to that album a couple months ago, and it is great.
I agree.
Like front to back.
Absolutely.
But in Staten Island, you really weren't. And the worst part is now looking back at it, I'm kind of mad because I think like in Long Island, New Jersey, places like that, pop punk was legitimately what all the kids listened to.
I think so.
So we were caught in a weird world where everyone in high school listened to hip hop. So we weren't cool there. And then when we formed a band and started to play in the clubs, everyone was much harder punk than us. So we were accepted there, but there was always like, oh, it's these new pop punk kids. So we didn't fit in anywhere.
Right.
There was no one like us at the time.
Yeah. Oh my God, 100%. Yeah, because you're not punk enough for the punks and you're too punk for everybody else.
Yeah, although the punk kids were always really accepting. So I can't. They were always really cool about it. They were not. They were not elitist by any way. Because I think at the same time, we could like go hang out. And then I look back and we were young, and I'm like, oh man, we were probably hanging out in these studios. We were young to be hanging out because everyone was a bit older than us, maybe like 4 or 5 years older than us.
Right. So you're like maybe like a freshman and you're hanging out with like seniors.
Probably a little event, maybe like junior with kids that have already graduated high school, I want to say.
Gotcha.
And then we had the younger kids who were like the freshmen, sophomores, and they thought we were cool.
So. That's not a bad place to be in, I don't think. And it makes sense to me because I think if one of my favorite tropes of pop punk is the "Get Out of This Town" song, and in the 5 boroughs of New York, I feel like Staten Island is the one that you could have that sort of like resonance with that kind of song with.
Yeah, I was, and you know what? There was like, I think in general in New York City, it wasn't that big because like we would have like a band that we knew in Brooklyn, right? And like they were the only one there, and there was a band in Queens, and there was like 3 of them there.
Yeah. Well, because what can you tell me of your experience with what was popular music in New York during this time? Because you're sort of like my musical historian, because I have this idea in my head that New York didn't even really have a rock station for a long time.
Well, it did. It did. 92.3 was rock, but it was very heavy metal. So you had like your heavy metal station, and maybe I always used to joke that they used to play like a Metallica song every hour type of place, and then like every 3 hours they would play like a Blink song, like back then. And then they would have this one show. It was at like 11. I used to listen to it, and they would have this one show. I think it might have been syndicated nationwide, and I remember I would listen to that show, and I remember that's when I first heard Newfound Glory. It was like, hey, there's this like new band, and because they would play more alternative tracks from around the country. Yeah. And I remember being like, oh, that song's really cool. And we would go, it really wasn't popular where we were from. So we would actually go to the record store, which was like Sam Goody or Best Buy, whatever. Yeah, and we would peruse the aisles and looked for albums where the kids looked like we did.
Yeah.
Like I remember we were like, because we used to dress so stereotypical pop punk. Like we would have
Dickies,
the
shorts,
long Dickie shorts,
long sleeves under a short sleeve.
You had a lot of the baseball tees, a lot of hats to the side or whatever. A lot of I still wear all. I'm such a loser. I still dress like it, but a lot of Billabong, Hurley, DC, all that stuff. I have DC
Macbeth
shoes on now.
Macbeth shoes and
that stuff was big. So we would look at the back of the albums. And I remember we looked and we saw, oh, there's this band Mest. They look like we dress, so we bought the album. And then we would look at the album cover notes and we'd be like, oh, we want to thank Midtown. And then we go out and buy Midtown album, and then we see who they thanked in the notes, and then we'd go buy that album. And that was, I think like Napster, that was all around, but we didn't even know where to search. Like it was before a lot of this stuff was big. And like I said, we didn't have a lot of people that we could go ask, right?
Yeah. That was the pre-internet version of, if you like this, you might also like this.
Exactly.
On iTunes. I relate to that so hard because the bands I was really into when I was in high school, dressed the way I wanted to dress, were into the kind of bands I wanted to be into. Like I almost viewed them almost as like the cool older brother that I never had. Yeah, because I was like an only child and growing up in nowhere, Maryland. And I was just like poking around on Amazon and being like, "Mom, I'm gonna buy these," and then they're like, "Okay, just keep it under $30."
My like Hanukkah, I'm Jewish, so like my Hanukkah lists were always probably like so dumb. My parents, because you gotta remember these things were not very mainstream, and it's like Amazon wasn't the way it was today.
Correct.
So like I used to love. I'm gonna geek out a little bit because I believe you had him on your show, but you had I think Tim from Alistair.
Yes,
But
yes,
I remember
did.
I'd be like, "Hey, Mom, I want an Alistair T-shirt." The only way you're buying an Alistair T-shirt is you're buying off the drive-through record site, and the drive-through record
Right.
site is legitimately like a warehouse with 5 people in California. So like, my parents like, what are we buying for our kid?
Yeah. And I remember when you had to like write the description of the item you wanted, and you had to use like a check or money order or well-concealed cash. Like you could actually stuff cash in an envelope and send it
I
to
don't think you
drive-through
could do this
records
anymore, but
Oh no, definitely not. Well, now I feel like there are companies that could help. Like
I think there are
we
companies
started,
that distribute everything for you.
yeah, like if we started a band, we could have merch done very easily. I think.
Yeah.
I am really. This is.
But it wasn't at that time.
No, it wasn't. And this is not that long ago, and it sounds like we're talking about like the
here's
70s.
the scary part. It's kind of a long time ago. It's like
I guess
18,
so.
19 years ago, I think, that was when I was 16. But yeah, there was like a stretch of time where
I guess so. It is 2019, so yeah, it's almost a generation. Like there are high school graduates now there that like don't know like the world before 9/11.
it goes
and
back
the
about
internet.
10 to 12 years. Because I was at work and I was listening to Taking Back Sunday, and someone I work with came in, heard me listening to that. Now she is like 12 years younger than me, and she was like, "Oh my God, I just saw them play their first 3 albums live in Irving Plaza," and I was like, "That's as young as it goes, man." Like,
Yeah.
like she is the bot. And I asked her how. She had an older sister that got her into the music, but she still remembered that anyone that's still in college now or high school, that forget it. This is like another world.
Oh yeah. Well, when the last time because the Starting Line do like a holiday show every year.
I used to go
and
when I was in Jersey all the time.
It was in Jersey, and I used to go also. But the last time I was there,
Oh, like Starland?
yeah, it was at the Starland Ballroom.
Yeah.
That's how I first heard of State Champs and Real Friends. But they asked the crowd, how many people heard of us because of your older brother or sister? And like it's
Place
like,
went nuts.
place went crazy. They went as crazy. This is the other thing I love about the Starland Ballroom. If anyone's listening, they follow me on Twitter. I feel excited about it. Every time in between bands, when the screen goes down and the ads start playing, every time the IHOP ad comes up, the crowd just loses their minds. They're like, yeah.
I love Starland. So my really good friend Ben, who I was in bands with for a long time, he works in the music industry. He worked there for years. So I used to go to shows with him there all the time. And I love Starland.
It's a great venue. It's just hard to get to if you don't have a car.
Yeah, well, we used to I think we used to live in Hoboken together. And before that, we used to go when I was in Staten Island, and that was fine. But once we really after a while, it's too hard to get to.
Yeah. Now, I am genuinely curious. So your parents were confused by pop punk, but were they musical people also? What's your house on Staten Island like growing up?
I didn't. I feel like a lot of Beatles. I feel like my parents were probably top 40 type people. Or just like I feel like a Beatles was always playing. I remember Jimmy Buffett for some reason. I don't know, man. Like maybe John Denver.
Kind of like
nothing
you're
that
more
seemed to. But like I know they also had like Lionel Richie, so it also seemed like very big acts that like you would easily recognize.
Stuff that was easily accessible,
Easily
and
digested.
And I'm not trying to criticize any
I'm
of those
judging
artists.
them.
Yeah.
My
Oh, you are.
parents
Oh, you are.
mostly.
Oh, okay. And you had? Did you have siblings?
I had a brother, but he was 5 years older. So
Okay.
by the time I grew into my musical stylings, he was way out of the house. Like when he went away to college, he like really never came back. So my high school years, I was, but my cousin who lives in New Jersey, who's a
Gotcha.
couple years older than me, she was definitely the one that kind of was like, oh, if you like this, then try this. And that spurred it for me. But yeah, it was a lot of our friends who were either we either were only children or they were the oldest, and it was like a group of us that were like, how do we discover more of this? Like we
Yeah.
were just like, this thing is great. No one knows what it is. We can't ask anybody, and we were like detectives.
Yeah. Well, but that's kind of, I found that kind of exciting when
It was so exciting.
Because when I realized, I can't remember exactly what age it was, maybe like 13, but when I definitely remember a point where I realized that the movies that were in my house and the music that was in my house was not my decision. I was kind of bored by it. And it was like, oh, wait, I don't hate movies. I just don't like these movies. I don't like Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan.
You realize that there's this whole world, and it's actually something that I wonder if kids have this today. I guess they do, but it's processed differently through the internet.
Yeah.
Where you just have this realization that you're like, I assumed this was all that was out there. I thought music was just these 50 artists who are on the top 40. Yeah, so the three stations of New York were Z100. They're very top 40. You had Hot 97, which was hip hop, and you had 92.3, which was like rock but heavy rock. So a pop punk band would not be on 92.3.
Right. So are we talking like, like modern mainstream radio rock, like your Creed offshoots and your post grunge?
Yeah, I would say
kind of
stuff like Godsmack, Seven Dust, Limp Bizkit was huge.
Yeah.
Korn.
Gotcha. So like, yeah, the modern
Stained.
metal. Stained. I still like Break the Cycle. That was the song, or like when I started learning guitar, Epiphany by Stained. That was like the first song that was in like an accessible alternate.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that I was trying to like find other stuff. Because I wasn't a really big hip hop guy, and that was huge. It's not like I feel like all the guys like hip hop, all the girls like pop, and then there was a lot of crossover, and I'm like, oh, what's this band here?
Right.
And I was like, and I tried. I think I even went to like a concert, like a Stain and Korn concert. Like I had a friend who liked those bands, who was like, oh, if you like Blink, you'll like these. It was fun though, but I don't think it was for me.
Sure.
But it wasn't like I didn't hate it. I was like, there's 20,000 people here watching this. Like, who are these people?
Wow. So where would that concert have been?
It wasn't in Madison Square Garden, but it was something like either.
Was it in New York?
It probably was in New Jersey. In Staten Island, you either did two things. You either went to Manhattan or you went to, because you had places like PNC Bank Arts Center and wherever the Nets played, you had that in Jersey. And then in New York, actually for a lot of the smaller bands, you could go to New York because they had Irving, which is still around, but what was Roseland Ballroom? I love Roseland Ballroom. It's not open anymore for shows. But yeah.
What street was Roseland on? It's not. It's in because I'm trying to think where I saw because I saw OAR a few years ago, and it was on 34th Street, like over towards.
I think it's in that area. I think it's in the.
It might be called something else. It might be. Yeah. But yeah, I remember I remember Roseland.
That was
like Terminal 5 open or
no? Terminal 5 kind of I think replaced Roseland, that stature venue.
Gotcha. Okay.
But those, I think, like growing up though, the places you would go see shows, unless you were going to see an arena show, you had Chrome in New Jersey, which is I think where a lot of those bands, like Starting Line, started. I think it was called something else too. They changed it. Well, you had Chrome, and then you had, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
It's going to kill me.
But that is so interesting that you bring that up because, like all the pop punk bands never really played the city. Like I remember when I saw Green Day at the Barclays Center recently. Recently, it's probably like 3 years ago at this point. They were telling the story about how they never played New York City. They would play Long Island, they would play New Jersey, and they never played Manhattan until they were opening for Bad Religion. But when you're talking to me about being in with all these punks, it made me feel glad that the punks were open minded because I feel sometimes some of the true punks, I call them, can be closed-minded and not realize their own hypocrisy. So I'm glad.
I think the Staten Island ones were cool just because, and we always were like, we were always faster and stuff. So I think we were not super sugary pop punk,
Yeah,
But
I've listened to your EP.
Oh, that one's from a later. That's when I got a little bit older. But it was a little more raw and stuff. And I think in general, there just wasn't a lot of us in Staten Island, and even though we might have played stuff that was a little on the little poppier side compared to them, I think we were almost like their little brothers in a way. Like it was like, it's fine. Also, they probably liked us because we were in high school. So when we'd play a show, 100 people from our high school would show up.
Yeah.
And then,
so they're like, oh, yeah, we like having an audience.
They're like,
yeah,
cool.
Of course you can open.
Yeah. And we were, it was fun. And like my best friend, Ben, who I mentioned before, worked at Starland. It was, I think in our best years, it was probably him. My friend Sean was a drummer. And then my friend Dave from Queens came in as the singer. And that was probably when we were like really strong, my old band, Next Stop Nowhere. And Ben went to a different high school.
That's a great pop.
So it was like, oh, thank you. So it's like you were pulling in from multiple high schools, and it was funny because like there was a couple kids. You met Kent before, right?
Yes, I have.
From Atlantic Transmission. Well, I know Kent from Staten Island, and there was not a lot of us in either school. So,
right.
But people would love to go to shows because it was something to do.
Right. And if there's nothing else in New York, and if New York is so expensive and there's nothing else that's really suiting your fancy, and I don't know what year would this have been?
2001 maybe.
So are we talking like right after 9/11 or before 9/11?
Probably a little after.
A little after. So I imagine, I don't know if maybe that was like on everybody's mind. I imagine, from what I've heard, it was on a lot of...
I mean, yeah, I don't know if those two are correlated because I think it might have been before and after. But I will say this. Here's the problem with probably the world in general and youth.
Right.
Because I just watched this movie the other day. It was about like drug addiction and everything. And but I'll tell you, when we were growing up, there was not a lot of stuff to do. There was not a million things to do. You can go walk around the Staten Island Mall, hang out in like Applebee's. But in general, you were looking to like go to someone, like if you were a teenager in high school, it was like, whose parents are away? Let's go there and hang out and drink. And like it highly escalated. I don't know how it went from like us drinking beer in high school to like heroin, but like there wasn't a lot of stuff to do. So if you were a band in Staten Island, you could be like, come to the show. I think parents, and the show was in like, it was on this place called Dock Street. So it was in like the poor neighborhoods in town. But to be honest with you, I think parents were just happy to get the kids doing something.
Yeah.
And people would go to shows.
Oh yeah. Just have them showing some initiative, you know,
just something to do. What do you have? What else do you have? Like the movies?
Yeah, I guess. So you were going to be in bands. Was that the dream?
No, that was the dream.
That was
down.
And you were always a bass player, or were you a guitarist?
I was a guitarist for most of it, and then I was a bass player in my last band, which I had sent you the EP of.
Yeah, which is really good. Like I was taken aback by not by the production level. It sounded
but
really good.
But by me, most now.
Yeah, well, your bass lines are very good, and your tone is really solid.
I think it helped that I was like a B- guitarist, but like an A+ bassist, because I could do the same work on the bass that I could on the guitar. It was just way more impressive to do it on the bass.
Well, I always and it's mostly like if I was going to start another band, I think I would want to be the bass player because
me too. It's so much fun. I love it.
It's a lot of fun. I love doing. And the bass players I love aren't the like shredders like Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big or even Matt Freeman from Rancid, even though he's amazing.
Yeah.
I just love the guys that can play like the simple root notes, but have great tone, really make the band sound huge and look cool while they're doing it.
Oh yeah, basses always kind of look cool.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so. Like Mark Hoppus has been kind of like my model for how to be a cool dude for my entire life.
Like I would think that I was going to be like, I can't really judge you for that. I agree. I remember Blink in general. You were just like, damn, it's cool.
Yeah. And the thing I love about his bass specifically, just to be a little gear heavy, is that it's a jazz bass body, but it has P bass pickups, but flipped ones. So the thin strings sound beefier, and the heavy strings have more mid range, which I like. You don't. It kind of
I've
avoids
never
that,
heard that explained so well, but that, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of keeps it from having that like woofy kind of bass tone.
And it also, for him, it's interesting because he's kind of rhythm guitar and bass at once.
Yeah, and he plays lots of chords, and like he'll do like alternating notes because, to kind of because they're a 3-piece, and you're being the rhythm guitar so that you can fill in for when the leads come.
Yeah.
So
I like when I was bass, it was a 3-piece, and what was fun about it to me was you had the responsibility of 3 things. Like was always my goal, right? Is you want to make the band sound big, really connect with the drummer, but also because it's a 3-piece and the singer is also playing guitar, is that you get to do a lot of fun stuff to fill in, because you get to play with things a little bit more. Because you could be, I always felt like we had the ability to be more creative instead of like, all right, this verse is just a chugging, line. It's like, we could do whatever we want with this. We could jazz this up a bit, but still have the drummer flying at a fast speed.
Yeah.
That was 3 pieces, especially 3-piece for bass is really fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well. I just love the simplicity of having like three members. I just really like that configuration. I've never been in a 3-piece. I think I was always in like 4 or 5 pieces. But
there's pros and cons to each, I would say.
Yeah.
3-piece is easier just for coordination and everything, but it's also harder in that you need to be really like everyone really has to be in it. You're in a bigger band, you could have one person who's like, look, I'll just book the shows.
Yeah.
Like you'd have people doing more of the business side and then people do more of the creative side. Which is usually how, if you know, like I think a lot of the bands that when they're smaller and get big, like everyone has a specialty I'm a big believer in. Like this guy's great at marketing. This guy really understands the business side of it. This guy's a really great songwriter. This guy's the glue that keeps the other 3 together. There always seems to be like that. So when you're a 3-piece, it's tough because you really have to have everyone. It's harder. You have to actually keep them on the same page more.
Yeah, and so in those roles, because I believe you. What would have been your strength? Were you strike me as the guy who keeps everyone together?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
because you're like the good humored one. Even in our group now, I think you're sort of like the fun.
You like
glue.
when the tension gets high or something. I'm the one to like talk it out and be like, all right, this is what we should do. And I would say probably. And then I think I'd be a good backup on the business side of it. But probably that glue piece. Yeah. Actually, looking back, that's definitely what it was in the first band.
And that first band was called what?
It was the Next Stop Nowhere.
Next Stop Nowhere. Any recordings available?
Oh, I could dig some up. Definitely.
Because I love doing this stuff, man. Because I want to release some music again because I really. Like I have all these songs that I've written with friends who I think would be more than cool with me, like putting them out, recording them and putting them out. I really want to do some music stuff again this year. And because I feel like we're on a similar wavelength, you're a good person to talk to about this kind of stuff. Oh,
definitely. I know for me, I'm hell-bent on this now. I really want to do it because I mainly perform comedy now, but I started doing this thing in the shows where I play guitar a lot.
I've noticed
it's like a very new thing, but it's gone over very well. And my whole bit is basically a pop punk emo song. It started out, we were doing a Christmas show, and this group Sketchy asked us to open up, or Backdoor Barbecue to open up.
Yeah, Backdoor Barbecue is Paul's sketch group, and I'll say our sketch group.
Our sketch group.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Don't shortchange anything.
Yeah, because
except Mike and Chris.
No, but this will be the beginning of the next bit.
Yeah. So anyway, this group Sketchy asked us to open up, but it was a Christmas show, and they were like, "Oh," and I was like, and I love doing opening spots because it lets us test some stuff out. It's different pressure. Ironically, I think our opening slots are great because we just have short bursts of energy and we could structure a set well, but we didn't really have a lot of Christmas kind of holiday stuff written.
Sure.
So we converted a couple sketches, right, that were easy to rewrite.
Yeah.
And then I convinced Mike and Chris to let me do a song, and it was a Hanukkah song.
Yeah.
But it was really just an emo like Christmassy acoustic song. I just replaced the Christmas lines with Hanukkah lines.
Yeah.
And it's about a girl that left me, and it worked.
Yeah, no, it was hilarious. I remember this bit.
And
Gotta plug some of this in. I don't want to lose any of this great content that we're creating.
Of course. So my big thing now is like I want to record a Hanukkah, like a pop punk acoustic Hanukkah album, because someone pointed out to me, they're like, that's never been done before, like in that way. And I was like, I don't
think so. And I think that there's definitely a market for that because there's so many I feel like there are a lot of Jewish people in punk rock. The whole
definitely,
and even outside of like the oi 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 kind of scene, I feel like
pop punk bands were definitely Jewish.
Yeah. So bands were the thing. So Next Stop Nowhere. This was your high school band.
Like high school to college.
Yeah. High school to college. And now kind of take me through that time. Did you go to college in the city or did you leave?
I actually went to Delaware. That was probably that was the middle point of the band, but I purposely went to a school that I wasn't too far. So Delaware to Staten Island's like a 2-hour drive.
Right.
So I basically could get back. We actually this sounds so cheesy, Will, but we actually used to do this. The other 3 guys, Ben, Dave, and Sean, would record in Sean's basement. Send me, because I was really like almost lead guitar in that band. So they would record on a cassette, mail me the cassette with like the chord structure, and I would put it in my head. I'd write the riffs for it, and then I'd come up to practice with them like once a month, and it was like I was practicing along with the audio cassettes,
right?
Which we don't even have anymore. Now we just use our phones, but
yeah. Or you could just email the files. But I mean, I think that shows dedication because I feel like if you're not committed to it, you would just go, fuck it after a certain point,
Oh yeah, no, it was really fun, and we would do cool stuff. I actually really loved recording a lot. It was something I really loved to do. And we'd always recording a new EP or something was always the most fun for me.
Yeah,
because we'd go away and it was like a little vacation where we'd go somewhere for 3 or 4 days and kind of record it the right way and practice before. And I want to say one time we went away and my friend Kent actually demoed us in his garage, recorded all of us.
Oh wow!
As a test run, and then we went out and he came with us and we recorded in I think we recorded in Delaware at this really cool studio, and it was that to me was always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love being in the studio. The one time, and I'll have to send you this sometime. The one time that I went into a studio and we recorded a demo over a weekend with a friend of a friend's from high school. It was just the most fun, having the headphones on and talking to the producer behind the glass. It was great.
I wonder if they were because I would try to be invested in it, but I wonder if I just sounded dumb. Oh, why don't we raise the level on this? And I wonder if they're I get it, Paul.
Yeah. Well, there's this YouTube channel I follow called Spectre Sound. It's this guy who mostly does metal, and he lives in Canada. And he has these very practical tutorials, and then he has these fun videos where he just yells at he just makes fun of bass players for not knowing how to play their instrument, basically. So maybe, but that was the first time recording in the studio I got to use a Les Paul. I had a Stratocaster, and we mixed the Stratocaster.
Oh wow!
And the Les Paul, and I used the Strat for clean parts. It was really something else.
That's cool.
So I kind of want to trace this journey here. So how long was that band around before it turned into the band that I heard?
A while, at least 4 years.
And did you tour? Were you guys
we did tour? We might do shows out in places, but it was probably limited to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut.
Gotcha.
That type of ring, something that wasn't too far away that we can get to.
Sure.
Nothing major, but we did get to open, and not anyone famous, but we got to open for some national acts because so remember I said everyone in the band had a thing. Ben was really good at the business side of it, which is funny because he still works in the industry now. Now he does cool.
What does he do in the music industry?
Right now he does a lot of work with festivals and whatnot, but he's Oh God, he's gonna kill me. But he sent me this cool thing, like in like music news. It was like he was named to this big position. He does like a business development for this company. He works on all of these cool festivals and tours and stuff.
Oh, that's
it's really
awesome.
cool. I'm not doing it well justice explaining it or anything, but he does cool stuff. So he would always like intern for different people, and like he used to intern for Starland, which is how he got his job there,
Yeah.
and then that's how he, went through the ranks. But like I said, these weren't big bands, but like at the time it was fun. Like I remember one cool show we did was at I want to say the Knitting Factory.
Oh,
And I
nice.
know like it was like Streetlight Manifesto and some other people.
Wow, you
And,
played with Streetlight Manifesto?
yes, we did.
That's
I
so
remember.
cool,
I
man.
remember that show because the drummer broke his bass drum in like the last song,
Uh-huh.
which is very funny now looking back on it. But
Yeah, yeah.
just like smaller band, we did a lot at the Continental, which is where the small now it's a bar, but it used to
Yeah.
also be like a bar stage.
Mhm.
But there was like a lot of the smaller bands, like this band Wakefield, which was like the ex drummer of Good Charlotte.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of them.
Or like a Change of Pace. I think they had like an album or two out that was decently. When I say big, I mean big
Yeah.
at that time and that scene.
Yeah. No, yeah. I feel like punk especially, like if you don't have like a decent run of like high profile mainstream success, it is such a tenuous kind of popularity. Like,
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
like if you're maybe like the drummer or bass player for a popular touring national pop punk or punk rock band, if you're not like on the I feel like if you leave that band, you're almost starting over essentially.
You really are. Like I remember it was someone who had helped us out at the time managed this other band who also managed Wakefield, and I think they
Uh-huh.
put us on the show. But I mean, Wakefield was very small, but they were on a major label. I think mainly because it was the ex drummer of Good Charlotte, and they were like, "Well, we'll give these guys a chance," and they looked the part. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
they
they
fit
weren't
in.
big at all, But at that one moment in time, they had a full-on music video, that maybe aired once on MTV, but like a full-on music video, but the name
Yeah.
it doesn't go that far. Just especially being the drummer, I think the frontman can get away with a lot if they leave a band and restart because you're kind
Yeah.
of the voice of the band. But
Yeah.
it's hard to rebuild. We did some other. I think in the next band, one of the coolest, one of my favorite shows, which was a big deal for me at the time, was we had the last show I ever played. We opened for Punchline, who are
Oh,
Fueled
cool.
by Ramen, and it was a bunch
Uh-huh.
of Fueled by Ramen bands and like us.
Oh wow.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that was your last show.
That was my last show I think I ever played, and I think my singer quit like after the show. I forget why.
Oh, I've definitely had that. My band, my high school band, we were called Strictly Tech. We fell apart after our demo was finished.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, we're all
It's
friends.
always bad timing.
Yeah, we're all friends now, and we're all doing our own thing. And like my drummer like works for a venue at a dispensary in Oakland. My bass player's in like a heavy metal band, which I think is where he's always wanted to be. I'm doing comedy, and my former lead singer, he's like blissed out in the mountains somewhere. He's a cool dude. So did you have a moment, because you were telling me with your last band that you were getting ready to like get ready to go on the road?
Oh,
full
I
time.
was ready to go. It was like really. I had graduated school.
And what'd you study?
Marketing. It was
Marketing.
whatever I could do to graduate.
Okay.
But I didn't really have a really career or anything. I told the other two guys, I was like, if we want to do this, like I will do this. 'Cause we had really cool equipment. Like we were ready to go. I was like, we could trade in one of our cars, get a van, and just if we want to do this, now is the time to do it. Like we're like 22.
Yeah.
We do it now. And the drummer Sean was like amazing drummer. Our lead singer Dave looked like a lead singer on like a magazine.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, we could do this. Like we sound pretty good.
Yeah.
We had
songs,
the
good show.
intangible stuff.
Marketable looking.
You know what? But you need to have every person on the same page.
Yeah.
And like life gets in the way. So, you had people in relationships that were like, well, and it's so funny because when you're 22, that something that you could break up in a week, but in that moment, it is like live or die on this one kind of thing. And
oh my God, yeah. Like my
and
first breakup in college, I thought was the end of the world, and now I'm like, I didn't know shit about.
yeah,
the
but
end of
it'd
the
be
world.
funny if you were like, hey, should we go and alter our lives? And you're like, no. I
Yeah.
don't want to leave this person. And then a month later, they're broken up or whatever. But I would have done it. But I also was at that point where I'm like, we're either gonna do this for real, or I'm kind of tired of being in this stage of being a band. And I was
Right.
almost fine with it either way. Like I had look, if you ever want to, if I can go back in time and talk to anyone, I'm like, be in a band in high school.
Yeah.
That's really fun. You'll have the time of your life being in a band in high school. Being in a band in college is still pretty fun. Being in a band post college,
Unless you're trying to make a run of it.
to me wasn't as fun anymore. So I'm like, we either do this for real or like
We
don't.
find something else. And was that kind of when you realized that it was not gonna not everyone was on board, was that kind of like a oh shit moment?
I kind of knew, because that's the reason. The second band was like 3/4 of the first band, so I'm pretty sure we broke up for the same reasons.
Right.
Like it's really hard. It's a lot to ask someone to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't go back to school. Maybe you shouldn't get married. Let's go do this crazy thing. We have no money and no real plan, but
Yeah, it's a really big ask of people.
I give a lot of credit to to bands that just go out and try it. Like when they make it, like they deserve it, because I'm pretty sure no one in their life is saying that this is a good idea. I'm pretty sure the whole world is like, you're an idiot. You're never gonna make it. So hats off.
Yeah,
and then I feel like I got into comedy right after that. Honestly, like
And what age was this, you think?
22,
22. So you've been at it for a while. How old are you?
34.
You're 34. Yeah. So the band breaks up because I kind of had
Crap. I'm doing the math in my head.
So I had a similar thing. I was in a band in college. We were called Edge of Memory. We had done a local show that had a decent amount of success. We had my good friend Leo, who listens to the podcast. Hey Leo, how you doing?
What's up, Leo? He doesn't know me, but
well, if you don't know Paul Leo, he's a cool dude. I bet if you ever come visit me again in New York, we'll all hang out. We'll have fun. We kind of hit this point where like he went off to college several states away. So it was just me, the bass player, and the drummer, who's really into death metal, I never got really close with. And then it was just me dealing with this bass player who would just kind of lie to me pathologically and give away all our merchandise. And I reached a point where I was like, I don't want this anymore if it's going to be dealing with this.
Yeah, it's hard. I think by the end of it, there's almost a relief of like, if we're just going to fight, then is this going to be that fun?
Yeah. And like I never really came to blows with the bass player, but basically we had these other people and they basically reformed a band without me. And then it was just, and then I was just kind of alone in my studio apartment going, well, shit. And I was still studying theater, and I was like, well, now what's my other thing? I'm studying theater, so I'm pursuing that, but what is my other thing that I'm going to do? And that's when I found stand-up comedy open mic and went. So did you have
creative itch, I guess?
Yeah. So did you have a moment like that? What brought you to comedy? I kind of
fell into it. So my best friend Ben, he went to college. His roommate was a guy named Dan.
Yeah.
And when we go out, it was one of the, like, when I would go visit him, it was one of those things where like Dan and I would like hit it off and we talk comedy nonstop. And they were a year younger than me, right? So when they graduated school, I think my other band was broken up. And Dan was like, I want to put together a sketch comedy group. And it's going to be, there was 5 of us. It was like Charlie, Kenny, his friends from home or Queens, Ben, and he's like, oh, get Paul, he's funny, I know him from college. So we started this group called the Grape Duchess of York. We did a lot of online stuff, and I did that for a while. I fell a little out of it for a bit, but we had done this live show, and it was like this full-on stage show, like 11-12 person cast. It was called Enchantment Park. It was a 4D show. Like they were There were actually 3D glasses given out. We had artists create like 3D rides, and it was about this messed up theme park. And I think I was doing a podcast with my friend Ben called User Reviews. We did for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And then we started I did Enchantment Park, and our director of the show was like a teacher at the Pit. And I'd kind of fallen out of doing a lot of sketch stuff with those guys. And I was like, I should go back and do this. And I started taking sketch writing classes there.
Okay.
And that's where I met Chris and Mike. The three of us actually took a class together. We actually put on one show with one other person from that class. And then we kind of stopped doing stuff. Mike and Chris went on to take the next writing level. I had a health issue. I took a little break. And then...
Are you good now?
I'm good now.
Good. I'm glad.
And then after that, it really... After my health issue, it was like, you know what? I'm kicking myself for not performing more. Like, I fell out of doing a lot of stuff. I love doing it. So I started taking improv classes.
So you went from being in a band to sketch comedy. I see how that jump could happen. You know, it's a collaborative, group-based
It
effort.
makes sense.
Yeah. And then you start doing sketch writing classes, and then you go to improv.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to get back on stage. I want to perform more. That was my whole thing.
After recovering.
Yeah. So I took an improv class, and then after class, a lot of people would go over to Pioneers, which is like a
bar
like a bar
in
right by
Manhattan.
there.
Yeah.
And I went to Pioneers one night, and
because this is when the Pit was over on 29th Street?
No, this is more recent. This is
more recently.
This is pretty recent. And I went to Pioneers, ran into Mike, and he's like, "Oh, do you want a drink?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm not drinking. I had this health issue." Talked to him about it. He goes, "Oh, he had like his appendix burst." I don't know if I should highlight that. But
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
Mike's not going to listen, and if he does, I'll know he did because I called him out. But and anyway, we just started talking again, and the next thing you know, because you were already with Mike and Chris. The next thing you know, I'm guesting in a show for them, and this is back in like 2016. Right.
Yeah, I remember that because I had hit a point where I needed something else going on, so I was trying to find other little side hustles, and I had started interning at the Pit. So I was like, oh, if I intern at the Pit, I could meet people and tech their shows.
It worked, actually. Yeah,
it worked out pretty consistently.
Not all plans work out like that.
Very rarely do they. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And then because I actually got stiffed on the show that Chris and Mike saw me do, because I was supposed to get paid for it. I never got the money for it. But then again, they were like, hey, you did a good job. Do you want to tech for us? And I was like, yeah,
I'm in.
Let's do it.
And and the funny part, and I have told this to Mike and Chris before because I think it's hilarious.
Right.
But there was never no one ever had a formal discussion of me joining the group. I had done, I think, the November show in 2016 with them.
Okay.
And I remember when they were like, what do you want to do? Do you want to write and perform? I was like, I would love to write and perform. So, I'd go to all the sessions with them. And then they had, December was like, I think maybe it may have been the first Chuckles for Children or just like a holiday show.
Yeah.
And they just like put me on for that show. They're like, well, if you did this one, just do the December show. And then come January, I just got the schedule of like what the schedule was for the rehearsals.
Right.
And I was like, I guess I'm in the group.
That's kind of.
I don't think we even talked about this until like a year ago. And I was like, hey guys, do you remember how this happened? I think we did it a bit in the show.
Yes, you did.
And we came up with a fictionalized story of how it happened. But I was like, guys, I don't think you guys ever formally were like, do you want to be in this group?
Yeah.
I just kind of became a part of it.
I mean, knowing what I know of you and your personality, this does seem like the most perfect way that you would join a sketch group is just kind of like be there and then like, hey, I guess I'm in the group. I feel like that's how Kirk Hammett joined Metallica. They were just practicing. He came auditioning, and then they recorded an album. And he's like, well, I guess I'm in the band. I guess
I'm in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's probably the nicest way because it's the most organic. It's just. And it never felt weird. Like, I never felt that it was weird.
Yeah.
But, like, looking after like a year went by and I thought about it. I was like, you know what? They never. And I think just now was the first time where my initials are in the logo, because Mike and Chris's initials are in the logo.
Yeah.
And I just was never in it.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, but
maybe that's the best way it should happen. It's like it was almost like an understanding.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Yeah, that's perfect. If it doesn't have to be said, then it's just organic. It just occurs in such an organic way that no one ever thinks it's weird until you're doing a bit about it. So I'm curious about when you were taking sketch classes at the Pit. What were some of the things you learned as far as how to write a sketch and like the structure of a sketch?
Oh, that's exactly what I needed from it is, and I had done a lot of video sketch, but it was a lot of it, especially early on, was like me going to my friend Dan. I'm like, hey, I have this stupid idea, and we just get it. We'd almost just not even write a script. We just start filming. We're like, oh, okay, this is what we'll kind of talk about and say. But almost to the point where it's like really for my detriment, and then because I think we had done a couple stage shows, and I was apparently I'm notoriously bad at memorizing scripts.
There have been a couple of backdoor barbecue shows where I have been like, okay, all right, guess we're going over that.
And I'm just, you know what it is, but my background was really more of just get from A to B and don't worry how you get there.
Totally.
And Chris and Mike have learned. Thank God for you, Will, because I can tell you from being in other shows, not all like we just get each other comedically.
Yeah.
So you vibe on it, and you don't even flinch. I think you almost expect it.
Yeah.
But I've done other shows, and let me tell you, the techs are baffled.
Yeah, I've heard about some of this. I've even heard some of my comedian friends, and I don't know if you ever wanted to do stand up at all.
I have this itch, but I don't know. I don't even know where to start, which I guess is a class. But
you could do a class, or you could just I mean, or you could go to some open mics and then just kind of hash it out that way. You could always ask. You could always do stand up in the show, like be the
oh boy,
and we could make a thing out of it there.
I think I'd enjoy it. You know why? Because you know why you're a really good stand up.
Why is that?
Well, it's one or the other, like chicken or the egg. You're either a really good podcast host because you're a good stand up. You're good at stand up, or you're really good at stand up but it's probably because you're a good storyteller.
Oh, thank you, man.
You know what I mean? And I think I could do it.
I think you could too. You definitely have the personality for it. If you can do like a desk bit, because like I enjoyed telling a story for my one man show on the show, but one of my peak moments of sketch comedy was doing that news bit.
Oh my God!
With the gin blossoms,
hilarious.
I loved working.
I
want
to bring that back so bad.
It's such a good. I loved working on that bit. If you could do like something like that, because that's essentially a joke I could do in stand up form, but I'm playing off of Mike and I'm able to do other punchlines directed at Mike. Yeah, I definitely think you could do something like that.
And the bit was very funny. It was about how you would address gun control, and it would be
I would my gun control law would be that you have to listen to Hey Jealousy by the Gin Blossoms while looking at a picture of your ex and get through the whole song without crying. Then you could buy a gun.
Which, by the way, is amazing in a sketch show because we had a lot of fun beating up, not even beating up Mike, but just putting in a fictionalized girl later in the show that was the person.
Yeah, writing another sketch for that. It was it was so much fun.
But you're right. It definitely all started with a stand-up kind of routine.
Yeah. So I definitely think you could do that. And to go back to the tech thing, I've heard some of my stand-up friends like have some, or just other improv people have some like horror, not even horror stories, just baffling things of like the tech getting weird about like if a blackout got missed and someone commented on it, the tech got mad about that. And it's like,
yeah,
I would first off, I mean, I rarely miss cues except for that one time where I had to rebuild the show while the show was happening.
Yeah, but that's actually more impressive because you didn't miss a cue. The cue lab went down.
Yeah, the entire thing broke. And we just kind of wung it we just kind of freeformed it while we were doing the show.
Can I say something? Can I say something snow snobby though?
Of course.
Yeah, I'm like really, and you've spoiled me. And there's this other girl, Christine Pin, at the pit, and like I used to work her a lot with my old group with Enchanted Park and you with Backdoor Barbecue, and it's like you guys have spoiled me because what I've learned over time, and like you gotta remember, my experiences sort of started with her, and then I had you right after.
Yeah.
So I almost was spoiled up front. And I kind of expected like, oh, this is what like I remember one time we were doing a show and I did not miss my line.
Right.
And the tech just skipped a page. Whoa. And I think it's like it went to like a music cue and it was like out of the blue and we were like baffled, so I know what I thank you.
Dude, not a problem. And I think what made, because these were all like new skills I was learning, like learning QLab and learning the board and the underground, and even like doing the first Chuckles for Children. I think that was like the first time I'd ever done a show in the Striker, which is
really,
yeah, and which is like if you're not familiar with the People's Improv Theater here in New York, it's like the big 100-seat, maybe a little bit more capacity theater on 24th Street. So that's like the big time to do that show. So I was like, all these new like buttons and like, oh, how does this work? And like, oh, okay. And oh, we could do this. So that was the fact that I was working with cool people. And I don't know if other groups, I feel like, I don't know if other sketch groups feel like the tech is so integral to the group core of the group. But I really feel included.
I'll have two comments on that.
Okay.
One, no. Two, I've seen people be very nasty to techs, and I don't know if you know anything about like leadership or management or anything. That is not going to make someone want to do better for you. Like,
well, being on the other side of that, having like worked in retail and bad call center jobs, yeah, I definitely know the people I've wanted to work hard for, and then the people where I've been like bare minimum to get by. That's all you get from me.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people who. Opening for shows is where you really get to see a lot of the fun stuff, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And like I'll just see things like they're like, oh, by the way, I changed all the scripts. Here are these 5 things we added on. We need. Oh, do you think you could do this? And this is like a minute before door opens, and the tech is just looking at them like, how? Like,
right.
what plan do you have in place to get this done?
Yeah.
And there usually isn't one.
Yeah. I feel like there's, and I hope after that show they learn like, maybe I better not change the whole thing. Maybe rehearsal and tech is scheduling tech is important. But yeah, I feel like, and I can only speak from my experience, but I feel like we all vibed together very well.
You know what I think is good about you? I feel like you are not like a tech person trying to do comedy. You're a comedy person teching a show.
Yeah.
Because I could tell. And look, I'm just going to apologize on air because I don't think it's Chris and Mike that probably give you fits on stage. I know it's probably me. And I don't think I've never like I've never learned my lesson because I never had consequences because like nothing ever went wrong. But I do know, like I did Old School Sketch Show last year. Actually, she's amazing, Jane. She does the tech for that show too. She does a lot of stuff for that show. But I knew I was like, I can't fuck around this show. I have to know my lines. I have to hit my spots. These are like 10 people I've never worked with before, who all are experienced. I need to have an idea of what I'm doing, and I would study more. Although we are trying to get more organized moving forward. But I remember that show. I was like, crap.
Yeah,
like
it's just like let me focus. Let me hit the books. Yeah. Well, you never give me headaches. At the most I have to do, because I don't take any of this too seriously anymore.
Yeah.
Like even like I have friends like I had Kevin McCaffrey in here. He's been on Letterman. He's and on True TV. He's like a national headliner, and there are still some bar shows that people ask him for a tape. And I thought at a certain point, if you've been on late night TV, that there were that sort of
you'd just be like, cool,
that gate was unlocked for you. But that's to me a symptom of people who are taking themselves a little bit too seriously, and that's something
there's a lot of that.
And that's something I always try to remember. I always remember professional but fun, because you can be both.
Definitely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's more fun.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? I think a lot, and I think a lot of the people who, same thing when I was in bands, and then also when you're doing comedy, a lot of people take stuff way too seriously. And sometimes you want to just hit them over the head and being like, best case scenario, we're performing for 45 people in this basement. Like, let's never forget that.
Yeah.
You know, and our goal is to just have a fun. I think it's both ways. I want the audience to have fun, and I want to have fun. And if I'm not having fun doing it, then you're really missing it. And you'll see some of these groups are so stressed before, and it just kills energy. And you're just like, guys, it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Like, let's laugh.
Yeah, it absolutely should be fun, because if it isn't, then you might as well just have a regular job.
Oh yeah,
and then just go home after it
and call it a day. Don't.
Yeah, because otherwise, well, yeah, what's the point?
What is the point?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. Well, I mean, what I've realized is that I just feel glad to be doing shows in New York City, because there are a lot of people that I know, and I'm not going to name any names, but I'll tell you off mic, that are so toxic people that they can't even they don't even have that privilege anymore. So I'm just glad that I'm doing shows, and that people, I generally get good feedback. So I feel happy about that. And I'm just glad that I get to spend time with people I like people like you, and talk about bass and comedy, dude.
That's the fun part. You know, I think everything I do, my only prerequisite for it is I want it to be like I'm almost friends with you first.
Yeah.
This is something that's fun doing together, because I do a whole bunch of different live shows now. Mm-hmm. Like Backdoor is where takes the most time.
Yeah.
But the other shows I do, like, I will do them forever because they're just fun. Like, it feels like when I show up, it's like camaraderie, and that, oh, these are all your friends that you see once a month in this show, and this is awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that, again, that I got to meet you from taking that internship at the pit, and I'm glad that we're doing
yeah,
shows.
It's a weird road how we all connected.
Yeah.
And I think you were wearing like a Blink shirt one of the first times, something like that.
Yeah.
Or I was wearing one of us was wearing a band t-shirt, and you're like, oh, wait, you like that too?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this.
Oh yeah, and this might be the perfect story to close, because again, I want to bring in my friend Leo into it. We met when we were working at Target, and I'm 6'7", he's 6'5", so we were talking about that, and I asked him to settle an argument I was having with my girlfriend at the time about who was heavier, not better, but heavier musically, Aerosmith or the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. And he agreed with me that Aerosmith, just they have heavier sounding guitars, heavier bass. And then he mentioned, oh, what kind of bands do you like? And I was like, oh, Blink-182, Angels and Airwaves, Plus 44. And he's like, dude, those are all my favorite bands. And those are the friendships that I'm going to keep forever. So I think we're going to be...
It's a small group of people, because those bands were huge for a moment, but there's two types of those fans, right?
Yeah.
There's the ones who you tell them, and then there are ones who are like, I used to listen to those bands in high school.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm very comfortable with that. And even I'm at the age where if the new stuff I hear, like 5 Seconds to Summer or Waterfalls, is too poppy for me, I'm not going to begrudge them, because they're still well put together songs. It just doesn't resonate with me the same way, because it doesn't remind me of my salad days.
I'll just go listen to Knuckle Puck and Real Friends and State Champs.
Yeah. Or in my case, I'll just go explore all of the music in Japan.
You're very international, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm gonna tell you about some bands that I've discovered in Japan, because Ouster is still very big in Japan.
Yeah. They still play there?
They're going on tour in March.
Oh my God, I would love to go to Japan to go see Alistair. Which
I would love
sad.
to. Yeah, I've got some albums that I'm gonna recommend to you. Is there anything we can promote before we get out here, Paul?
Obviously, Backdoor Barbecue. I don't know when this comes out, but we have a show March 28th. I don't know if I'm dating myself.
I think I can have this out before then.
Cool. We have that show, and then I also do 2 monthly shows. One is called, I hope I get this right, Super Crazy Fun Time Variety Game Show Hour. It's usually like the first Thursday of every month. Pit on the Striker. It's a crazy show.
Nice.
It's like I can't even describe it. The videos, there's videos online. It's nuts. And then I also do this show, Extremely Serious Wrestling, that Chris got me into. It's a wrestling sketch show. That's also once a month at
the Pit Loft.
Yeah, I play I'm a good guy. I'm a dentist called the Big Floss Man, and let's just say I want to go for the title.
Awesome. Sounds good. So, yes, March 28th, People's Improv Theater, Backdoor Barbecue. And thank you so much for doing this, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dude, it's been great. Thank you. I could seriously talk to that guy about music for hours. I love chatting with Paul. I love talking guitars and bands we like, and we probably chatted about, this band, okay, I'll check them out for a good 10 minutes after we turned off the mics. So if you guys again are in the New York City area, Backdoor Barbecue, Paul and I's sketch group with Chris Miliaccio and Mike Bryan has a show this Thursday at the People's Improv Theater. I'll have links in the description. If you enjoyed the podcast, please feel free to leave us a rating on iTunes or add us to your favorites on Stitcher. Those are ways that help the show grow. That's the end of the show for this week. I hope you, wherever you are, you're doing something that you enjoy. And if you aren't, I hope you're thinking about the thing that you enjoy that you're going to do as soon as you're done with that, if it's a job or some kind of social obligation. So thank you guys again very much for listening, and I will see you next week between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everybody.